All right, hi everyone, and welcome to this Learn with Google Hangout on shopping campaigns. We're here today to talk about an overview of shopping campaigns. So you've probably heard something about them and want more tips and tactics for upgrading. So that's what we're here to do, is help you get the information you need. So my name is Nicole Primo, and I'm a Partner Education Manager for Google Shopping. So I'm excited to be with you here today. And before we dive into our core content, I'll just point out a couple of pieces of functionality in this console that hopefully will be helpful to you. So the big one here is that there should be a Q&A widget on the right-hand side of your screen. This is where you can enter in questions at any point during the webinar. So if something I say, you want to learn more about it, definitely enter your questions at any time, and we'll be saving about 15-20 minutes at the end. So definitely enter your questions. I'm looking forward to answering those and getting you the information you need. You'll also see a survey. This will be in the actual event page in the description as well as the comments. So before you hop out today, please do take a moment and give us your feedback. We really rely on that to make sure we're getting you what you need. So take a moment, it's short and painless, and we'd really appreciate it. And then last but not least, a great functionality of these Hangouts is that they are recorded, so you'll be able to access them afterwards as well as send them to anybody else in your organization who may not have been able to attend but who might want to benefit from these learnings as well. So without further ado, at this point then, we're going to dive in. Great, so as I mentioned, here's what we're going to be talking about today. First, we'll talk about Google Shopping as it exists today, and then we'll transition into what are shopping campaigns and how should you actually go about upgrading. Well, finally, we'll conclude with some more advanced tips for those of you who are looking for more best practice type content, and then of course there'll be time for Q&A at the end. And I will note before we get started that this webinar relies on some basic knowledge of product listing ads, or PLAs. So if you're not sure how to upload your data feed or kind of manage your product listing ads already, I strongly encourage you to review some of our 101 and 201 webinars and Hangouts first, and then you'll be able to get more out of this one. All right. So shopping today is a 24/7 experience. So those of you who have seen our past webinars know this message, but basically we can all attest to the fact that we shop not only from kind of traditional in-store experiences now, but we use the internet and the web to shop at all points of the day from anywhere across our many devices. So with 60% of US retail sales being influenced by the web in 2017, you know that this is an important part and a growing part of your business. So that's where we are today, and I think it's important to start with this fundamentals, because what we're seeing today is that users are constantly connected. So because of the increased adoption of smartphones generally makes people more mobile in their internet access, consumers are shopping at all hours of the day, on their way to class, for example, during work breaks, at lunch, and even right before bed. And they're doing this to the point that casual shopping has become the norm. So for retailers, this means that there are more shoppable moments than ever before. And so as I mentioned before, the term shopping doesn't just refer to browsing for products we know we want to buy, for instance, a digital camera for your computer. It also means using the internet to browse for pleasure, or even to get inspiration for an outfit for an upcoming party, or a gift that you have no intention of actually purchasing in that moment, but you know will become an important purchase in the future days. So with Google Shopping, retailers can connect with these consumers and display products that are relevant to their search in the moments that matter. With product listing ads or PLAs, you can showcase your entire product inventory and include important information that consumers care about, like brand and price, right up front before they ever get to your website. So in other words, we know that you have a lot on your plate between managing a store and probably managing at least some type of advertising already. So PLAs help you streamline by doing the work of targeting your products to the right search queries based on your individual product information so that we're making sure the right customers see your products at the right time. So here's what we've heard about the current experience creating and managing a product listing ad campaign. So the good news is that retailers are actually finding a lot of success. Specifically, Google Shopping and product listing ads help them engage with customers who are highly relevant and actively interested in their inventory. So essentially, PLAs give them a digital shelf for showcasing their inventory to online shoppers. So the success is great, but we've also heard your feedback that you want operational improvements in the way you run your campaigns, and we're definitely eager for the opportunity to respond to this feedback. So basically, we hear you loud and clear that retailers of all sizes need a more intuitive experience. For instance, managing your product data in Merchant Center isn't necessarily simple, and managing your product listing ads in AdWords can be kind of time-consuming and sometimes confusing. So on top of that, we've heard that even after you've gotten a campaign up and running, it can be hard to maintain it and to know how to find room for improving your return on ad spend. So for example, I've personally talked to retailers who aren't sure if their campaign is set up correctly, how to increase their incoming traffic, or even how to track and manage what they already have live. So we started by talking to some retailers and thinking more deeply about how we could translate these general requests into an easier to manage and optimize campaign system. And we realized that at the end of the day, retailers think in terms of their inventory. They need to react quickly to changes in demand and supply, and they want levers so that they can promote products according to inventory levels, customer trends, and other more dynamic factors. So we dug a bit deeper into your feedback, and the key insight we discovered is that this is at the center. You really want to manage your campaigns just like you manage your inventory. So, of course, this is what we're trying to bring you. So we've come up with shopping campaigns to address these pieces of feedback. We hear you, and we're really excited to share a better way to manage your product listing ads. So we've introduced these shopping campaigns so that you have a retail-centric experience, meaning that you can easily identify the products that matter to you and then control the bids according to these products' value. So for example, you can now, with shopping campaigns, browse your feed directly in AdWords and select the products you want to bid on more granularly. You don't have to worry about things like overlapping products and orchestrating the lowest bid for certain groups because it's all based on your entire inventory that then gets subdivided. So all of this provides that retail-centric way for management. But we also wanted to give you the more advanced reporting that helps address the concern of not simply knowing how your products are performing. So now in shopping campaigns, no matter how you organize your products, you can review every single product's performance by key attributes like brand, product type, and even individual IDs. So this allows you to slice and dice your performance reports however will be most useful for you. And of course, last but certainly not least, we wanted to respond to many advertisers who previously weren't sure how to improve their traffic. So now shopping campaigns provide benchmark data like max cost per click bid and benchmark click-through rate. So in addition, you'll find helpful tools like impression shares so you know how much more traffic you could be getting. And you get a bid simulator so that you can understand how adjusting your bids might not only impact clicks and impressions, but also cost. So we hope that you're a little bit excited at this point to start using some shopping campaigns. But before we show you how to actually get set up, I want to share with you one quick success story. So Farfetch is a retailer who has already upgraded their regular PLA advertising to the new shopping campaigns format. Farfetch is a London-based retailer that was able to stay on top of their top-selling brands and products by optimizing their data feed and creating custom labels, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So you can see these numbers, which I think are pretty impressive, but specifically they improved their conversion rate by 13% and decreased their cost per acquisition by 20% with shopping campaigns. Basically, by being able to more easily identify and bid on their product collections and understand the performance of those product collections, they were able to adapt to competitive pressures and easily and efficiently make changes to how they're advertising their product lines. So hopefully this gives you a good sense of why you might consider upgrading sooner rather than later. Basically, you get a bunch of great new functionality and features, as well as access to metrics that can actually help you improve your performance on top of whatever you're already doing. So because we've heard a lot of great feedback, similar to what I just shared with you from Farfetch, we're excited to hear that advertisers are finding shopping campaigns to be a useful way to organize and bid and report on their product inventory. So by late August, we're asking all advertisers to upgrade their PLA campaigns to a shopping campaign, and at this point, we'll automatically upgrade your PLA campaign if you haven't done so already. So now that we've covered some key benefits of shopping campaigns, again, I'm hoping that you're really excited to start using them. So without further ado, I'm not going to make you wait any longer. Let's shift to how you can actually get started and use shopping campaigns in your day-to-day management. So we encourage you to think about this upgrade process with 3 basic steps. So that your first step is going to be creating a shopping campaign, kind of getting that basic outline set up. Next, you'll pause your regular PLA campaign so that you're not duplicating efforts. And then last but not least, of course, you'll take more time to kind of customize your shopping campaigns for your specific business's needs. So let's jump into this first step, which I mentioned was actually creating the campaign. The good news is it's really simple, probably won't take you more than a few minutes. Basically, you'll create a new campaign and select the shopping subtype from that drop-down menu. You'll follow the on-screen steps to choose your campaign settings, for instance, things like setting your campaign budget and selecting a default bid. Next, you'll want to pause your regular PLA campaign. As I mentioned, this ensures that you avoid having 2 campaigns running at the same time so that your new shopping campaign doesn't have to basically compete or kind of conflict with your regular PLA campaign. And of course, that last step is to customize your shopping campaign by subdividing your product inventory into separate product groups. So essentially, product groups, as a quick reminder, are the way that you'll organize and bid on your products. So each product group gets assigned its own bid. So in that sense, a product group is a way for you to select which products you'd like to bid differently on. So in this screenshot, you're subdividing your inventory for apparel and accessories, as well as electronics. So by breaking out these products, you're able to set a 30-cent bid for apparel and accessories, a 75-cent bid for electronics, and then a 50-cent bid for everything else in the data feed. Let's walk through an example. So after you create a shopping campaign, you'll end up with something that looks like this. You'll notice that it only has that all products group and the bid you specified in your campaign settings set up as your default bid. So in this case, 40 cents. When you're ready to subdivide the all products group into more specific product groups, you'll click that plus icon and you'll see a new window where you'll actually choose how to subdivide. So in this window, you'll have 6 main options for how you start subdividing. Category, which pulls from the Google product category in your feed, brand, ID, condition, so that's for those of you who have large used or refurbished inventories, product type, or one of your custom labels. So once you choose how you'll start subdividing, so in this case category, you can now select which values you actually want to break out. So if this is Acme Superstore, let's say, they may choose to break out only their apparel and electronics, since they have very high margin, high volume categories within those 2 main groups. So again, here they'd click that arrow to add the categories to the right panel and then save. So now you can see that the campaign is broken out into those 3 main categories we saw before. Again, apparel and electronics, which they just selected and specified bids for. And then now that all products group has become an everything else category. So notice that everything else is automatically created for you once you start subdividing, and it basically replaces your all products as the catch-all for the rest of your inventory that you don't necessarily care to spend the time closely managing, but that you want to promote maybe with a standard or a low bid. So of course, apparel is a massive category, so let's assume I want to subdivide further. I certainly can do this. I can do it up to 7 times, in fact, and basically I'll follow a similar process to what I just did, of course starting with clicking that plus button. So once I'm done breaking out all of my additional products like jewelry and shoes within that apparel category, you can see that I have much more specificity in terms of how I can promote and bid on my products within the apparel and accessories category. Note that I've chosen to exclude costumes, the costumes category, because it's not exactly the time of year for those, and I've specified bids for each category according to their relative basis. So like this example, you can align your product groups and bids for your specific retail needs. So just to do a quick recap, we just walked through how to get set up with shopping campaigns, which includes creating a shopping campaign and pausing your regular PLA campaign. We also talked at kind of a high level about how you'll think about and actually subdivide your inventory into product groups so that you can bid on different segments of your inventory. So in this next section, we're going to talk through a few more tips to keep in mind for more advanced PLA users. So the first tip to upgrading here is to start by thinking about your bidding strategy. So once you develop a bidding strategy and understand your needs, you can basically work backwards and plan how you'll subdivide your product groups to your desired level of granularity. So we chose these 3 categories because they're pretty common amongst advertiser needs. Starting from the left, there are those of you who want to organize your inventory and bids by product lines and maybe some brands. So in this example, you would want to primarily group and bid on different product lines like shirts, jackets, pants, and accessories, for example. Next, there are some of you who segment your inventory according to performance. So you bid according to the margins of your products, your return on ad spend or ROAS, and even conversion rates so that your higher value items get a higher bid. Lastly, on the far right, there are those of you who use basically some combination of these 2 product and performance approaches. You take both your product lines and brands into consideration as well as each item's value. So depending on your objective, you may merchandise your inventory based on products, performance, or both. And let's walk through each of these so that you have an idea of what each will look like in a shopping campaign. So if you think about inventory in terms of brands or product lines, here's kind of a rough example of what your shopping campaign might look like. You can create product groups and organize your inventory like you would in your store or catalog, where each product group represents a product line. So you can start with apparel, for example, then get more granular into women's or men's, and then maybe even use a specific brand of women's apparel that's especially important to your business. And if this product group template looks like it'll meet your business needs, then we recommend you use the product type, Google product category, or brand attributes to subdivide your product groups. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about each of those as well. So if you think about your inventory in terms of performance, margins, or sales, we recommend you use the template you see here. So you can choose to break out individual best-selling items or group your high-margin products differently from your low-margin products. So you could, for example, start by breaking out a collection of best-selling items, then subdivide by margin, and then last but not least, break out an item or two that produce different returns based on the actual ID. So to follow this merchandising strategy, we recommend you use custom labels as well as item IDs. And again, we'll get into custom labels later, but to touch on them briefly here, custom labels are a way for you to create a custom attribute in your data feed that supplements the other attributes. So for example, you can create custom labels, not just for margins or best sellers. You can create them for sales like Black Friday deals, or maybe even some holiday-based products that are more seasonal, like Easter products, Mother's Day products, etc. So the last example here is if you have those hybrid needs. So you may think in terms of product lines for a certain portion of your products, and then you may segment into best sellers in another. Or you may want to break out your brands and then high, low, and medium products within that brand. So whatever the case is for you in particular, you'll likely use a combination of the attributes we've discussed so far. So this includes product type, Google product category, brand, custom labels, condition, and ID. So in this example, let's think about a back-to-school campaign. You might use a custom label to basically tag all of your back-to-school items. Then you could separate your apparel from your school supplies within that label. And then last but not least, you could subdivide by different brands of apparel, for instance, backpacks and high-margin products. So it's important to note that you can use a combination of different attributes when subdividing your product groups. In fact, you can subdivide up to 7 times. 5 of these can be by various product type levels. So do keep in mind that while these templates have proven really useful for a lot of the retailers we work with, they are just examples of jumping off points for you to think about how to tailor your strategy according to your business's needs. So now that hopefully you have kind of some wheels turning about how your particular bidding strategy might translate into a campaign, let's talk about data feeds. So I don't think any of you will be shocked when I say that it's always been important for you to ensure your data quality is accurate and high level so that your information is user-friendly and you can match your inventory accurately to shoppers interested in it. That said, data feeds, I would say, are even more important now because shopping campaigns allow you to browse that data feed directly in AdWords and organize your product groups directly by those data feed attributes. So what this means for you is that we strongly recommend you revisit your data feed and ensure it's optimized so that you can subdivide and bid effectively. So you can see here the list of attributes that you can use to subdivide, those 6 that I've mentioned several times. And thinking back to our campaign templates, you may have noticed that most of you will end up using product type or Google product category as well as custom labels. So let's talk about those in a little bit more detail. So first, product type. As I mentioned earlier, you can arrange your product groups so that they match your own product categorization system, which is often called a taxonomy. So this taxonomy might be one you already are using, for instance, in your inventory database or on your website. So here are some examples of how you can use different variables in product type to target different product families and lines. So there's absolutely no one way to create a good product type taxonomy. It's really about thinking about how you want to group your products and doing what will allow you to do this in your feed. So a tip here is that if you want to use the product type attribute, be sure to use that caret or greater than symbol and make sure that you have a space before and after your levels. So for instance, bicycles, space, caret, space, road, etc. So the next attribute that I mentioned is focusing on your custom labels. So custom labels are that great supplement to the standard attributes we shared earlier, and they're ideal for tagging products as they relate to a promotion, performance, or stock. So to start, create a plan for your custom labels like you see here. You want to have an objective in mind for each different label and kind of a way that you'll define and map those values. So again, the table and example you see here is by all means just an example. There's no one right way to use this, so I'd recommend starting by figuring out what are the 5 top objectives you have for your inventory, whether you're more of a seasonal or holiday product person, or whether you really want to focus on selling rates and margins. So once you decide on your custom label strategy, you can start adding these labels to your feed. So notice that the value you want to be able to group products by, for instance, bestseller, needs to be in the same label number and column. So this is essential to being able to actually group those products by the same label. So I'll just repeat the point one more time. Make sure that any product you want to group by a label has the same label in the same attribute. For instance, bestseller is always going to be in custom label 2. A couple more tips for those of you thinking about custom labels. First, anytime you make data feed changes, make sure that you resubmit or re-upload your data feed with these changes so that they take effect in your AdWords browsing capability. And next, if you're using AdWords labels or groupings from regular PLA campaigns, you need to add custom labels, as AdWords labels and groupings won't be recognized in shopping campaigns. That said, I just want to emphasize that you should be adding custom labels. In other words, don't delete the AdWords labels or AdWords groupings from your feed, since these can be used for other ad formats like dynamic remarketing, and having them in your feed won't cause any harm at all. So far, we've talked about what you should do if you have a single campaign. So all of your products represented with one budget in that one inventory breakout. So let's touch on when it's the right time to split your products into separate campaigns. So basically, the short story here is that you may want to use separate campaigns if you want to be able to allocate budget to specific products or groups of products. And the nice thing is with shopping campaigns, you now have the ability to actually prioritize how multiple campaigns are seen by Google. So if, for example, you want to promote a flash sale, but you don't want to restructure your core campaign, you can simply add a new campaign, subdivide for those on-sale items, and place them at a higher campaign priority so that Google knows to take the bids in that flash sale campaign as opposed to your normal kind of core always-on campaign. So I know that's a lot of information and a little bit of a teaser. We will be getting into more best practices for multiple campaigns in our next webinar, but I did want to mention it here for those of you who are eager to get started with various campaign types. Okay, so just a quick tip as well for those of you who want to be able to manage a shopping campaign at scale. We recently launched the AdWords API for shopping campaigns. So this is a great option for those of you who have huge inventories or who have the technical resources to use API. It's definitely available, and definitely check it out. Another option is that you are able to do bulk editing in the AdWords interface directly. So for instance, you can change your bids and your destination URLs in bulk directly from your shopping campaign in AdWords. And just a quick note with regards to tracking, you can use your destination URL to track your conversions and your return on ad spend. So this isn't new to shopping campaigns, just wanted to mention that there. And that same goes for those of you who use the AdWords redirect attribute in your feed. Again, no change, you can certainly continue to use it to track conversions and return on ad spend. One note that you should probably check out is if you do use a third-party platform or the API to actually manage your tracking, you'll need to see if your agency or third-party platform provider can support shopping campaigns and if that API is up to date. So ultimately, at the end of the day, when you're upgrading to shopping campaigns, it's relatively easy to create more granular product groups so that you can more closely manage the inventory that drives the important revenue to your business. So make sure you're taking a step back to evaluate which product segments truly are your best products and that you're organizing your campaign in a way that will maximize your effectiveness while also keeping in mind your management resources. So for my part, I strongly encourage you to see upgrading to shopping campaigns as a great opportunity to basically start fresh with your PLA advertising. So with so many new organizational and reporting features, you might find that a totally new campaign structure not only works better for you producing results like you saw with Farfetch, but that you might also actually be able to decrease the amount of time you need to spend managing your campaigns. So again, consider an opportunity to start fresh and really take a step back to analyze what you need and how you can make it more efficient. So to summarize, we have a couple of upgrade tips. So first, develop a bidding strategy. Understand your bidding needs and structure your campaign from there. It's not the other way around because your bidding, the way you organize your products will determine the ability to bid on those products. So definitely think about your bidding strategy first and then make sure your campaign reflects that opportunity. Next, optimize your data feed so that you can manage your inventory, subdividing, and bidding effectively. Like we talked about, there are a couple of attributes that most of you should revisit, including product type, as well as custom labels, since those are key levers you'll use to group similar products, similar margins, as well as seasonal items. Finally, ensure you're able to manage and track your campaign. Obviously, it's really important to not only set it up, but to be able to continue optimizing and adjusting those bids on an ongoing basis. So consider your resources and make sure your campaign structure is manageable for those resources. In terms of tracking, hopefully it's a no-brainer why that's important, but essentially make sure you're tracking your performance so that you can adjust and maneuver according to actual return on ad spend. So we've reached the fun part of this session, which is answering your questions. So at this point, I'll give you a minute or so to enter in any questions in that Q&A widget on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll start reading those over. And just if you do need to hop out at this point, please remember to take that survey again so we get your feedback. All right. So we have some great questions coming in. So I'm going to start with a couple of basic ones so that we're all on the same page. So a great question about kind of some bidding is, can you bid at the subdivided level? So it's a great question, and hopefully, as you see the recording, you have the opportunity to look at those screenshots again, or maybe even you can just play with it in your own AdWords account. But essentially, the answer is yes. When you bid, that's where you'll be bidding, is at the subdivided level. So for instance, if I take my all products and I turn it into apparel and electronics, what I'm going to have is 3 potential bidding spots. I'm going to be able to bid at the apparel level, I can bid at the electronics level, and I can bid at the everything else that's not apparel and electronics level. So yes, it's the subdivided level. And then just to kind of make totally clear, if I'm then taking apparel and turning it into pants and shirts, I now am able to bid at the pants level, the shirts level, and then the everything else in apparel level. So yes, bidding is at the subdivided level. So another question along those lines is, can a product only be in one subdivision or one product group? So it's a great question, because that's, I think, part of the beauty of shopping campaigns, is that hopefully it makes it much, much easier for you to understand where your inventory is being bidded on within your campaign. So yes, within a single campaign, each product can only have one bid. That gets a little bit more complicated, of course, if you're starting to break out multiple campaigns, because then obviously you're going to need to keep track of the bids across campaigns. But again, that's where you can set campaign priorities, so Google knows which bid it should take. But all of that, as a little bit of a teaser, like I mentioned, is something you can certainly tune in to the advanced session in a couple of weeks for, because we'll be getting into more detail. So another question about kind of individual bidding is, can we exclude an item at the SKU level? So something we didn't really talk a ton about, but is definitely an asset in shopping campaigns, is the ability not to bid on certain inventory. So you may recall the example I gave with like the Halloween costumes not being in season, and so you don't want to bid on them. That's where you can exclude. So you're able to exclude at any level you can subdivide by. So for instance, you can exclude entire brands, you can exclude entire product types, or you can exclude individual products. So you would do that using ID. Again, you would simply have to subdivide for those IDs and then exclude them. Okay, so question about custom labels. How many custom labels can I use? So the short answer is that you can use 5 custom labels per item. So you remember you saw custom label 0, custom label 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are your 5 potential labels for any given item. Within that, there is a maximum of 1,000, so hopefully you'll be able to, within the 5 max per item, find a way to classify and custom label your entire inventory. Okay. So are merchant promotions compatible with shopping campaigns? The answer is yes. I would elaborate, but I don't think there's a ton more to elaborate on, except for maybe that for those of you who aren't familiar with merchant promotions, essentially they're a way that you can feature specific deals on your actual PLA. So they're a little bit of an extension on the bottom. You might have seen it says like special offer. That's a merchant promotion, and yes, they were compatible with regular PLAs, and they are compatible with shopping campaigns as well. So we have a question about average position. Basically, the question is, will we be able to see average position of our product ads in the future? So with this answer, I have a couple of points to make. So number one, average position is really, really useful for text ads. And one of the main reasons is because the difference between like position 1 at the top of the search results versus position 11 at the very bottom of the search page results in a huge difference in click-through rate, because I don't know about you, but I never make it to that bottom right corner of my search page. I would argue that the same is not true for shopping or for product listing ads. And if you think about the reason, it's because that interface, all of those items are lined up in pretty close proximity. And we're finding that really the determination of performance is more closely correlated with things like image quality, price, and title. So whether you're in the far left or the far right position within the product listing ad box is less important than how you're optimizing those other key considerations that shoppers look for. So that said, I do acknowledge that there is some potential for understanding where you are within that box on average, and nothing that we have an update on now, but in the short term, I'd strongly encourage you to focus more on images and data quality in general, specifically those consumer-facing attributes like title and price, because those are going to be a more close kind of predictor of your potential performance. Okay, so will search queries for shopping campaigns be available directly in AdWords? So at this point, if I'm understanding the question correctly, I think the answer is you do have that search query report or the search terms report, so definitely check that out. It gives you some insight into how shoppers are finding and clicking on your product listing ads, so that should be giving you some insight again into those search queries. Okay, so here's a question about ad groups. So the question is it a good idea to divide products into ad groups by category because of ad text? Just to give a little bit of background on this, with shopping campaigns, you are able to use multiple ad groups, and the primary reason would be for things like promotional text. It's not typically recommended for the average product listing ad advertiser, because when you break into multiple ad groups, you don't get that same like kind of beautiful, easy functionality of having that subdivision of a single inventory. So it's definitely a possibility to do what this person is suggesting by subdividing products into ad groups for promotional text purposes, but it's not something that I would typically recommend unless you have a strategy in mind that you know what you're doing and you know how it'll work. Okay, here's another question. So is there a way to set up the new shopping campaign at a higher priority level than the regular PLA campaign so that we don't have to pause it until the new one is completely set up? Okay, this is a great question, and again, something that we'll certainly get into in our next webinar where we have some more advanced tactics, but happy to discuss it now and kind of give you that brief overview. So what we're finding is that in many cases, people are able to upgrade within, an hour, like half a day, because they simply kind of break out that new product groupings and then they pause their regular PLA campaign. If you're an advertiser or you work with an advertiser who has, hundreds of thousands of products and has a really kind of sophisticated regular PLA campaign structure currently, it obviously is going to take you more than a couple hours to do this. So the result is you're having to run your regular PLA campaign at the same time as you upgrade over the course of a week or two. So when you're doing that, what I'd strongly encourage you to do is set your shopping campaign priority to high. What this does is it tells Google, again, when there are two bids for a single product, which campaign should I use? So in the case of high priority, that would be the campaign that Google would look at to determine which bids it should use. So again, a long story short on this is that by default, campaigns are set to low priority, and by setting that shopping campaign priority to high, you'll be able to run both at the same time, but use the bid for in the shopping campaign. One caveat with this is, let's say for instance that you just upgrade your all products target, so you're running your all products target in your new shopping campaign. If you were to set that to priority level 3, or kind of a high priority, it would then not use any of the bids in your regular PLA campaign because that bid is for all products. So I just caution you to be a little bit careful about when you set that priority level to high. For instance, if you haven't broken out all of your apparel categories into those more granular categories, it might not be time to set that to high yet. But once you're a little bit, maybe about halfway there, for instance, that would be when I'd recommend switching it to high priority. So great question. Okay. So here's a question about AdWords Editor. So basically, is AdWords Editor going to be are we going to be able to use AdWords Editor to create and update shopping campaigns? So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of that functionality that we see people using from AdWords Editor, like bulk editing of tracking URLs and bulk editing of bids, has been incorporated directly into the front end, so into that AdWords interface. But we have heard your feedback about AdWords Editor, and we're looking into kind of long-term solutions. So certainly check out the bulk editing features in the UI for the short term. Okay, so here's a question about, I think it responds to the question we had earlier about seeing search queries. And this question is, can you see search queries at the product ID level? So the short answer is not at this time. So right now the search query report is given to you for your entire campaign. So now that you do have multiple ad groups available to you, you do have the ability to add ad group level negatives if you're employing multiple ad groups. So again, search query report is simply for your entire campaign, though those of you who are opting in to kind of that advanced and limited feature of ad groups, multiple ad groups, may be able to use it. Okay, and any last questions, do be sure to get them in there, because we're getting towards our end and I don't want you to wait and miss the opportunity to ask a question you have. So definitely enter any others you are thinking of, or any clarifications from anything we've discussed so far. Okay, so here's a question. When will most advertisers be able to use the local storefront option for mobile shopping campaigns? So I think that this refers to what we're calling like local PLAs, or you might have heard of local availability for product listing ads. So if that's the case, I strongly encourage you to take a look at the webinar we did in late March, and that kind of talks about what are local product listing ads and what it takes to be able to kind of use those. I'll just give you the short version, which is it takes about 4 different data feeds, 2 of which you may already have, but it does take at minimum 2 brand new data feeds, and it also takes setting up kind of a separate local campaign or opting your existing campaign into showing those local products. So currently it's a more limited set of advertisers who are using local product listing ads and that local extension on mobile campaigns, and simply because it takes a little bit of extra effort to set up. That said, we're always looking for people who are interested in using local product listing ads and who have the ability to set up these additional data feeds. So if that sounds like you, I believe there's an alias LC. No, I don't remember what it was. Maybe we can post it to the page afterwards. But if in the short term, certainly take a look at the webinar that goes into more detail about what's required for setup and how you can get in touch if you are still interested in using it. Okay, and I think that covers all of our questions. So do definitely take a look at that survey and give us your feedback. It may, let's see, hold on, I think I see additional questions coming in. Okay, 2 more questions I do see. So a quick question was, so I mentioned that one of the benefits is that you'll be able to browse your data feed directly in AdWords. So one question that just got asked is, so does that mean I'm going to be able to edit my feed in AdWords? So at this point, still need to edit your feed standalone. So for instance, whether you're using API or whether you're using like an XML or a CSV or TXT file, you'll need to edit your feed on your own and then upload it into Merchant Center. So at this point, no ability to actually edit your feed in the AdWords interface. So in other words, another question I just got was, does this mean I still need a Merchant Center account? So yes, you do still need a Merchant Center account. Think about it as the place that you will house your data feed. So again, you create your data feed, you upload it into Merchant Center. Merchant Center gets linked to your AdWords account, and then that's where you manage your campaign, is in that AdWords interface. Okay, so another question we just got, again, this is about that search query report. So will you be able to easily add negative keywords in shopping campaigns like you can currently easily add negatives in regular PLA listings? So right now, I think the functionality you're referring to is that in regular PLA campaigns, you used to be able to check that box and then add them to the campaign as a negative keyword. That's not currently available, but again, we are looking into functionality that we're hearing feedback about, so duly noted that that's something that you're looking for. Okay, and then we also have a question about, so we've talked a lot about this search query report, I keep referring to it, and somebody asked a very logical question, which is, can you describe how we would actually go about finding the search terms report in a shopping campaign? So in your shopping campaign, what you'll do is you'll go into what's called the Dimensions tab. That's where you can see all of your performance reports like we talked about earlier, and there should be a button that says, it either says See Search Terms or Search Query Report, one of those two, and what I can do is I can post a link to an article that gives you kind of some screenshots and walks you through it as well. But for those of you who want to check it out right away, it's Dimensions tab and then See Search Terms, I believe, is the gray button that you should see. Okay. All right, so I think that does it for us today. Thank you so much to all of you for spending the last 50 minutes or so with us. Again, I'll just do one last plug. I promise, last plug for the survey so that we know what you want to hear more about. And then I will also say definitely check out the Learn with Google schedule. There's a lot of great stuff on there, but for our part, there is another shopping campaigns, more advanced tips and tricks hangout coming up. So check that out, register, and we hope to see you there. Thanks so much.